Hey everybody, Donkey Storm here, and today I want to give you some tips as you choose a main character to play in Shadowlands. I've spent the last couple of months doing videos about changes coming to lots of different classes, and now that we have an October 27th release date for Shadowlands, it might be time to start deciding what you want to play for the upcoming expansion. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 things to think about when making that big decision of what character you're going to main in Shadowlands. I'm going to start with the most general ways to narrow down what you want to choose from, and then move down to more specific things. And as I go, I'm going to give you my own thought process of what I'm going to play this expansion based on these 10 steps. As always, if you like what you see in this video and you want to see more Shadowlands content, please hit that thumbs up button or subscribe to my channel. Alright, here we go. Number 1. Consider your goals. Are you a high-end Mythic Raider? Do you want to push higher level keys in Mythic Plus? Are you a weekend Pug Warrior? Do you only care about Transmog, PvP? The most important thing you can think about when choosing a main character is knowing what you want to do with it. For high-end Mythic raiding, you probably do care about choosing a high-performing class, but if all you want to do is heroic raids with your friends, why not just play what's most fun to you? Don't feel pressured to pick the best spec, that's always changing anyway. You're much better off choosing something that fits how you play the game. Figure out how you do play, and then maybe do some research to find out what class and spec best fits your goals. For example, if I just want to pug raids on the weekends, maybe find out what healer's going to have an easy time finding groups so I don't have to sit around waiting too long. Or if I'm really into Mythic Plus, maybe I find out what class is doing some nice AoE DPS on the beta. Knowing how to play the game really has to come first before thinking about any other steps in this guide. For me personally, I know I'm going to be doing heroic and a touch of mythic raiding, but my favorite part of the game is Mythic Plus dungeons, so I'm going to focus on a class I think will fit that role well. Number 2, pick a role. This one obviously narrows things down quite a bit, but do you prefer healing, tanking, or DPS? Maybe you want to have the option to fulfill multiple roles and want to focus on hybrid classes like Druid or Paladin. If you don't have a regular group of people to play with, you might consider the ease of finding a group as a tank or healer versus damage dealer. Maybe your choice of role has something to do with the people you do play with, like if your raid group or just group of friends needs a tank or healer. Even beyond that, for a DPS character, melee damage and range damage play really differently, and they're worth considering that difference as well. For me, I prefer to play a pure DPS class. I like trying to squeeze out every ounce of DPS I can muster, check my logs, see how I can do even better, so that's where I tend to land in the role area. The reason I prefer pure DPS class is that it's usually a pretty good assumption that as the expansion goes on and balance patches are added, at least one of the 3 specs should be performing at a decent level, whereas a hybrid DPS class, I could have my options severely limited. So I already know I want to go into Shadowlands playing one of the pure DPS classes, Hunter, Rogue, Mage, or Warlock. Number 3, what's your playstyle? Okay, so you know if you want to tank, heal, or damage, so now let's get down to the specifics. What class or spec is fun to you within that role? What are you looking for in a rotation? What are the strengths you prefer a class to have when you play it? Having done quite a few Shadowlands class videos, I think it's fair to say that for the most part, with some exceptions of course, Shadowlands classes play like slightly tweaked versions of their BFA counterparts. Different classes and specs of tanks, healers, and damage dealers have very different ways of accomplishing their job, and just because you like tanking doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like Death Knight tanking better than Warrior tanking, for example. So here's the part where you ask yourself, what do I want my spec to be good at? Giant burst AoE? A healer that never runs out of mana? Single target DPS monster? I know that for me personally, as a DPS player, I want a class and spec that can do nice AoE damage but isn't totally gimped on single target. So let's say, well-roundedness is more important to me than being exceptional at one thing. Being able to make this decision is a key choice that leads us into step 4. Number 4, do some research. You know what role you want to play, and you know what strengths you're looking for within that role. Now it's time to find out what class or spec can actually fit what you want. There's a ton of information about class changes, theory crafting, people streaming the Shadowlands beta raid logs, and even fantastic class preview videos on this very channel you can use as tools to guide you toward a few possible options that feel like what you want. Just remember to always take every source with a massive grain of salt, as the WoW content creator community is a very salty one at times, and that you're getting almost always opinion and very rarely fact from these people. Don't take any one person's opinion on a class or specific spec as a definitive, and remember to always look at the date of what you're reading or watching because changes get made to the Shadowlands beta constantly. Still, doing a fair bit of research to help you narrow things down is really helpful. And I've definitely done that in the course of making my Shadowlands videos. So much so that I feel pretty confident in narrowing things down for myself to Rogue, Hunter, and Warlock as classes I wanted to take to Step 5. Number 5. Test it out. The public test realm is free, guys, as in you don't even need an active WoW subscription to use it. Take that handful of classes and specs you've narrowed things down to, and go try to learn the rotation on a target dummy, or better yet, in an actual group if you can find one. Even without beta access, I've found you can get a really good feel for how a spec plays. Things you read about or watch in a video make so much more sense when you actually do them. Just remember that the Shadowlands classes are balanced around level 60, not 50, with no Azerite traits, Heart of Azeroth, or essences. Things that feel a bit wonky on the BFA level tune might feel a lot better at level 60 with the Covenant ability and everything else we'll get. Still, I think this is an important step, specifically if you're considering something brand new, or you just want to see the tiny tweaks that have made to the class you're already familiar with. Having done this step, I realized that out of Rogue, Hunter, and Warlock, Survival, Assassination, and Demonology were not for me. Demo and Survival still felt really gimpy, and I've played so much Assassination Rogue over the last few years that I just can't do it again, guys. I can't. Number 6. Okay, fine. Look at some beta logs. I know this one might drive some people crazy, and that you should only play what's most fun for you and never let logs, particularly before the expansion is even released, dictate your decision. So I'm not advocating looking at something like this and just choosing the quote-unquote best class. Here's what I do look at, though, especially as a DPS player. The bottom. Why? Because, at least for me, no matter how fun a spec is, being down here, knowing I'm working my ass off trying to pump out my best deeps and getting blown away by everyone else, is not fun. That doesn't necessarily mean not to play one of these, but it's something to be aware of and something to look out for. For example, if I'm an elemental shaman, am I seeing any buffs or reworks coming between now and release? Likewise, sitting at the top of the damage charts toward the end of beta oftentimes makes the spec prime target for the nerf bat. So what I'm really suggesting here is just to be aware of this stuff and what it can mean going into a new expansion. That's all. For my personal choices, logs didn't really do much for me. Everything I was interested in was mostly in the higher middle or lower top tier, which is comfortable. Number 7. Consider aesthetics. Now we get down to some of the tiebreakers. You are going to be looking at this character a lot, right? So why not pick something you don't mind looking at? Does a particular class have a transmog set or just a general style that appeals to you? Does a class allow you to play a particular race you're fond of? For some people this might not matter at all, but it's always been something I've considered when choosing a class. I collect tons of transmog sets for the characters I play. It's one of my favorite off-time things to do in the game, like right now. So take a look at some transmogs for the classes you're interested in, or even look ahead to some of what's coming out in Shadowlands and see if it's cool looking enough to motivate you to want to play it. As a transmog enthusiast, I like to go into an expansion with my new threads ready to go, which is always a fun way to pass the time as you wait for the new expansion to come out. As far as my decision goes, my Rogue and Hunter have tons of transmog sets, and my Warlock has almost nothing. But I've got my eye on some sets that I've been working on putting together over the next few weeks. Number 8, channel your inner lore nerd. Again, the importance of this is very player specific, but some people, like myself, really enjoy the lore of the game and like to play a race, class, spec combination that feels lore relevant or at least lore possible. I've always really liked the lore behind orcs, the corruption of Draenor, Gul'dan, and all that stuff. So for me, Orc Warlock is a really appealing race class combination. There's a ton of lore related to WoW, and you can make a case for almost every race class combination being lore relevant if you want to. So think about what makes sense to you and what you want to represent in the game. It's also always fun to feel a lore connection to the content you're playing, so maybe you decide to play something like a Death Knight going into Shadowlands. Number 9. Get to know the community. Every class has its own Discord server, content creators, streamers, and all that good stuff. But the base for some classes is definitely stronger than others. So why not take a look at the ones you're considering? Enjoying the class Discord or finding tons of useful information there? well then chances are there will be a lot of helpful resources there after the expansion drops too. Found a YouTuber that makes really helpful guides for your class, or maybe an entertaining streamer that plays your class at a high level? These kinds of things can motivate you to want to play your class, learn to improve, and stick with it for the long run. So getting to know the community behind the class you want to play in can tell you a lot about it as well. Number 10. You do you, boo. What should you main in Shadowlands? The only right answer to this question is the one you're going to stick with and enjoy. The steps in this guide were designed to set you on the path to finding that class in spec, but there's really tons of reasons why you might decide on something. I understand the irony here, but don't just let some guy on YouTube dictate what you're going to play in Shadowlands. You probably spend a lot of time on the game and want to take some time to think about what's going to make the game most fun to you. So whether you've been maining the same thing since vanilla or change classes with every patch, it's really worth it in the long run to put some thought into what you're going to play so that the game stays fresh and enjoyable for you. As for me, I'm still working on choosing between those last few classes and specs, and when I finally do make my decision, I'll be releasing a video explaining why. So yeah, I'm sorry, number 10 was a total cop-out step. Sorry, but thanks for sticking with me for this long. If you liked what you saw in this video and you want to see more Shadowlands content from me, please hit that sub button, as I'm pretty excited to say we just about hit 500 subs. Not bad for a 3-month-old channel. Thanks for everyone who watches and sticks with me. Until next time, this has been Donkey Storm.